Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Luciano Lucas. I'm the product manager and head of sales for BitPlane, and I have a huge pleasure to be here today to introduce Imaris 8.1. Some of you I know, so I know you've already tried 8.0, which we introduced 6 months ago. Others I don't know, so I'll just pretend that I know you. But no, seriously. So we are talking about 8.1 today. It is a natural step from 8.0 to 8.1. It was a very large step from 7.7, where we were before, to Imaris 8. We introduced the arena view, and for some of you, it was a really big shock to see it. So we don't have any big shock like that today. It's a natural progression, and it will add some new functionality around the workflow that we introduced. We are at ELMI, and this is the 2015 edition. It's next to Barcelona. I can't actually pronounce the name of this town. Anybody? No? Is it Sitges or Sitges? Sitges. So it's Sitges. It's a beautiful little town by the beach, just south of Barcelona. And we have here in the room an audience of facility managers, some of them facility managers for sure, because I know them. Others, I guess, are scientists in life science, or at least microscopists. And that's not a bad thing. Okay, so some of you have seen this slide before, but I will go through it quickly. We have been in this field working with microscopists for over 20 years. It's 22 years actually this year. And we started out not with me, but with others. Marius Messeli was the main guy back then. And over the years, we moved from looking at image visualization alone, so just rendering 3D scenes using the computer graphics that were available at the time, to where we are now, which starts to go into the more experiment management and hypothesis testing. And the progression you can see there, we started with visualization, added gradually more and more image analysis tools. We tried to add also our first attempt to adding batch analysis was over here in 2008. We have now killed that completely and provided a completely new workflow for batch analysis. But we tried then. A very important point was also here in 2007, at the very beginning of 2007, we introduced a file format, which we still build on right now. It's a file format that can handle very large files, much larger than RAM. And it's based on the HDF5 file format, which you probably will hear others talk about. It's becoming really popular in the last couple of years with other software tools that are out there. So we continued to add more functionality. Spots and surfaces were the first two objects that we introduced. Really simple tools to analyze images, count number of foci, for example, or count number of cells. But then we started to add more functionality for more complex types of analysis, like filament tracing over here, and then later on cells, which were added in 2009. Cells is like a multi-compartment object, and it can detect the cell membrane, the nucleus, and different vesicles inside. We can't yet model things more complex than vesicles, but we would like to do ER and other organelles inside. That's where we're going. We have a pretty good relationship with the open source community. We continue to support that, and we very much like the interactions that we have. We had a link for some time with Fiji, and we still have it. But in the more recent years, we expanded that relationship, or at least we provided tools to expand this relationship through Imaris Open. This is a web platform. You can find it. I think it's open.bitplane.com. And you'll find there a platform with two parts. One is a forum where you can exchange information about Imaris, about image analysis. And the other one is where you can exchange plugins for Imaris. They're called extensions, but just like Imaris plugins. There's also some people that develop extensions, and they are aware of this platform and they use this platform too. And if you want, you can actually request an extension. Sometimes they will listen and they might actually do something. Other times they just do whatever they like. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So we have a link both to MATLAB, or we enable MATLAB coding, as well as Python, and that's a more recent feature. And the latest thing that we have introduced, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is Imaris, the new Imaris view called Arena. And I'll talk a lot more about that today. In the process, you can see there are a couple of logos that are not products or not tools. Technology logo means we were acquired. Bitplane was an independent company, was acquired by Ender Technology that makes microscopes, and probably you all know their cameras, the EMCCD cameras, and more recently the SCMOS cameras. And even more recently, was just a year ago, we meaning Andor and Bitplane, were acquired by Oxford Instruments, better known for creating superconducting magnets, which gave rise to the MRI. So they are credited with the invention of the MRI for medical applications. So we are now part of Oxford Instruments. That's why you will see some of our stuff says Oxford Instruments on it. And it's great. It's a huge company, by the way. I didn't explain, this is time and this is number of sites worldwide. On the y-axis is number of sites worldwide that use Imaris. So it's more than the 2,500 sites. It's more than 10,000 people, 10,000 to 15,000, difficult to pinpoint exactly the number of people actively using it every month, but through the usage data, that is a subsample of the people that use it, we know that it's about that number, 10,000 to 15,000. So you can see the progression, and we have been successful at analyzing and providing tools to analyze data sets like this. So this is a maximum intensity projection. There are two colors, two labels, fluorescent labels, one for the nervous system, one for a group of cells. And with Imaris 7.7 and all the other ones before, we could analyze a single image like this to study the morphology, the behavior, and the relationships between the different parts, the different structures within an image like that. But we realized that this is definitely not enough. It's very, very rare that you can write a science paper based on one image or even a couple of images. It's not the case, unless you're developing a microscope and then all you have is one image at the end to say, hey, my microscope works, that's enough. But for your, I guess for your clients, if you're a facility manager, for your clients, they normally have hundreds of images, if not thousands of images. And so the problem becomes a little bit more tricky to solve. It's not just analyzing very well this one image, but it's analyzing many images like this one and doing more with them. So we realized this and we introduced with Imaris 8 a new workflow that starts with the organization of the results meaning the raw images, into a structure that can be used to batch process all of those images. And this is just a pictogram showing this batch analysis. These icons are all Imaris icons. So this icon over here, the magic one, is called the creation parameter. And this you create interactively in a Surpass scene session. And you can save this creation parameter and reapply it to multiple raw images. These multiple raw images, in this case, let's say all of these are from the control group, and they're all analyzed with this one protocol, then result in a group. Let's say the control group is over there, result in a group that has all of the statistics based, all the statistics from that group. We have a huge crowd here, so that's why there's a little bit of background noise. So that's what we introduced with Imaris 8, is this new workflow that starts with a group of images, they are analyzed, and then we get a folder group at the end that contains all of the results for that group or groups. But the problem, and I wanted to really kind of drive this home and show you something, if we go with the 10,000 number that I mentioned, and I'll go through this relatively quickly to get to the point, on average, the users that work with Imaris have pretty large images. They tend to be 3D plus time. So Each image is 2.1 gigabytes. And an image means all the time lapse as well. So one image would be a full time lapse. So this is on average. And an image with a time lapse in 3D is actually more than 2. But of course, there are some people that use just a single 3D time point, and that's less than 2. So on average, it's 2.1. If we then multiply that by the typical, again, this is based on asking questions of the people that use Imaris. Typically, there's 250 images per experiment, and there are 2.5 users per site. And they do something like 8 experiments per year. So we start to multiply that. We get 5,000 images. And that's 10 terabytes. That's for a single site. So a single site, that's one professor with postdoc and a student. That's a small place. 2.5, let's say, if the PhD student is a half. So we have 2.5 people there, and they create 10 terabytes of data. It's not that much. You can buy, nowadays you can buy terabytes pretty cheaply, right? So that's not too big of a problem. If you're a microscopy facility manager, the problem gets a little bit more tricky because you have a lot more people. So the images are similar size, the experiments are similar format, but on average, there's 60 Imaris users per site. Again, this varies. 8 experiments, and you start to multiply all of this, and you get to something like 250 terabytes of data for a facility. But this isn't the problem yet. This is just the building up to the problem. Now, if you start to compound this, you have the raw data, which is, as we saw, 10 for a single small site to 250 terabytes. We have data duplication because often you edit the data and keep multiple copies of the raw data that you had. You also do some segmentation, so filaments or tracks or all of these things add up to the number of megabytes and gigabytes and so on. And finally, you create beautiful videos and plots and all sorts of great output. All of this adds to your data. So my estimation, after talking with a few people, is that this probably duplicates your data. This here, that's a factor of 2, sorry, factor of 2. This increases by a factor of 1, and this increases by a factor of 2. So in total, actually, you have something like 60 to 1,500 terabytes of data. And this is still not the problem, because a lot of data, you can just find a server, you go to Amazon, ask for a bit of their space, and they'll say, what, 1,500 terabytes? That's nothing. Here it is. It's like peanuts for a whole century. It's not a problem. The problem, the real problem, is data retrieval and efficiently getting information out of this data. That's the real problem. And that's a problem for us. It's a problem for our colleagues just across the wall. It's a problem for all of you. And we try to provide you with a reasonable solution. So our reasonable solution was introduced with Imaris 8, but it introduced because it was our first version of this solution. It wasn't a perfect solution. And now we are working towards making that solution better. And Imaris 8.1, and I'll show you that in a moment, has already a few significant improvements. So the real value, as I was saying, is in getting good information out of a complex situation. And this plot on the bottom right here, it shows, it's a plot created in Imaris 8.1, and it's a 1D vantage plot. And this kind of plot is really useful at dissecting out interesting or meaningful information out of a really complex, really large data set. That's several hundreds of thousands of points of data, so individual cells. And these are different groups. So there's 6 groups here. Each group probably has some hundreds of thousands of cells, and they're all plotted there. And this is still performing quickly. Okay, so conceptually, what we do right now with Imaris 8 and now 8.1 is help you organize and keep track of all of your data, all of these connections, because there's a lot of connections. We help you visualize. That's something we've been doing since the beginning of Imaris. Measure using the tools we have, and we continue to invest in developing new algorithms that will be launching probably later this year. that are truly new to us in object detection. And ultimately building knowledge, which is really what you all do. Your discoveries are knowledge, and you publish that, and we try to get you to that situation as quickly as possible. So these are the individual items. I mentioned that we have to keep the connections. That's the individual items that we keep track of within the arena view, all the way from metadata to the segmented results and the plots and the videos. All of that is interconnected, and you can pull out at any moment any one piece of information and know where it comes from, know the origin, and be able to see it in 3D space in the context that it lives in. So this brings us to Imaris 8.1. I mentioned is a natural step, so it's not an enormous jump like it was 7.7 to 8, but it offers three main things that will make your life easier. First one, and this is primarily for those of you that have to manage multiple users, is a new panel called Imaris Admin. This takes all of the functionality that was in the license admin and adds a couple of things. The first thing, I'll mention that in a moment, but it adds a couple of things to do with managing system preferences. That will be in the next slide. We also have received a lot of great feedback from a lot of you about the way we store the data. When we introduced Imaris 8, the data became became impossible to save it just with a simple file save as. It produced basically a database in the background, and it made it, for some people, difficult to utilize. So we've introduced a few new options on how you can save the data and restore it, which I think will make the life of many of you a lot easier. And the Vantage 1D plot, which is a great tool to publish your results. So that is, in a nutshell, what Imaris 8.1 is all about. So if we go a little bit more detail, excuse me. This is the panel. Sorry for the small print here. This is meant to be seen on the computer screen, not on a huge screen like that. This is a sliding panel, has 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's license, data management, system preferences, and advanced preferences. And what you get here is, first of all, the functionality you already had in Imaris 8. So you have the opt-in option, which means you can control which licenses are available for floating, which are not. This is something you already had from 8 onwards. It continues to be there. You have the control as a system administrator to say where the default storage path should be before the users start to change it, but you can set it immediately to a bigger disk. So Imaris, by default, will install it and say that it's in C. C might be a very small disk. So as a system administrator, first thing you need to do is, when you install it, is change that to something that you know is safer. So a big disk somewhere. But then individual users are encouraged to create their own storage path, and they can do that. There is control enough to do that in the individual installations. Then this is the biggest one. It's the one that is open right now. So if you click on that one, this one will collapse and the data management will open. But right now we are in system preferences. And this allows you as a system manager to say, for this computer right here, the system preferences should be X, Y, and Z. And this is really important to get maximum performance out of your computer for Imaris work. And we received a lot of our technical support requests happen because of this, because individual users will go, I don't know, will go into here, texture cache limit, and they'll just put the number of RAM that they have. This is not RAM. This is, at best, you would put something similar to the memory you have on your graphics card. That's what you would put there. But the user may not know, so we'll go there and we'll put 10 gigabytes because it has 10 gigabytes of RAM. Imaris will crash all the time. And you'll think, well, this is a problem. So that's just one of them. But what we have here is the number of threads, so number of cores we have on the system, the cache limit, the cache file the temp file basically is here, and a few other parameters. You will see that there is an option there to allow the user to edit this or disallow him to edit this. So if you disallow it, he cannot change it ever. Only you can change it when he's running it. If you turn it off, he can go and edit it manually, which can cause you some trouble, but for some users, it may be okay if they're well educated on what these things mean. And in addition to this, you have also the advanced preferences. And the advanced preferences, if you've ever delved that far into Imaris, includes something like 200 parameters to do with the settings of Imaris. And you can go in there and change them all if you wish or not. But now you can control that as well. So you should see less technical issues due to users going and changing things that they probably shouldn't have been touching. So this is the Imaris admin, which includes settings and licenses. And in principle, this should give you more freedom. It should give you more control and more freedom to control all these settings. The next item is, and this is probably one of the bigger parts that are new, and it's where we spend most of our time working, are new options to store and restore your arena view. So the arena view is a view of your database. In principle, it will include everything from your raw data all the way to your comparison plots. And it, by default, creates a folder on your system, and it keeps saving everything there. But we realize that's the situation with Imaris 8.0. We realize that this causes some trouble because after a little while, you may need to move the data. You may need to collaborate with somebody who is far away. And because of that, we introduced a couple of functions. First one is to store and restore the whole arena. It was possible to store and restore individual images already, but now you can do that for the whole arena view. And you can, for example, keep your personal arena view on a disk like this. If you want to, you can keep it on a disk like that and just take it with you. So you work on a computer today over here, you store it there, you go to another computer, you restore it from the hard disk, the mobile hard disk, and you just keep that with you. That's one possibility. Another one is to move from one disk to another disk to another disk. In case you start out working in C by mistake or not, and then you realize it doesn't fit anymore, I want to move it to D or whatever other disk that is bigger, or a RAID, SSD RAID or something else, you can do that simply using the store restore button. So that's something that is possible. And an even bigger, and it took quite a bit of effort to create this, is the ability to support network drives. So this is an intermediate step. We think that we're going to do more in this direction, but this is an intermediate step to help you collaborate with colleagues that are remote, or in case you want to work remote. So this allows you to say, I want to save my data on a network drive at the university somewhere, and you put all of your database there. It's saved somewhere. And a colleague of yours can, from somewhere else in the world, access the same data and look at the same data, work with that same data, and save it back onto the network drive. Now, small caveat, but very important, is you can't both access that arena view in parallel. It's not possible for obvious reasons. I can't edit the same image you're editing, unless, but at least right now we don't have this option. You could create two copies and then try to somehow merge them, but we're not allowed. This is not possible right now. So either person A is editing this arena or person B is editing this arena. So you should try to get collaborators in San Francisco or something like that, so that when you finish, they start, and vice versa. Or just have an email and say, finished, you can start. That's for now the situation, but it's possible to do that. Yeah, say again? Well, the data will be on the network, right? The data will be on the network in a folder, and you can see what's in this folder. But if it's an Imaris file with Imaris analysis on it, they will need Imaris to open it, because if they calculated spots or filaments and created a vantage plot. So at the moment, Fiji does not open that information because it's Imaris specific. Like Imaris will not open analysis created in MATLAB, not all of it, unless you actually code it yourself. But it won't automatically open it, or even Fiji. For the results, for the results it is. But if you save an Excel sheet, then it's fine. Or an export of your results into a CSV file, then it will open, of course. It's just a location on the network drive.
If you could access it with
We don't do the authentication. We use the authentication that the systems offer. If you already will have passwords to access your network, right? You have to put in your username and password. We don't override this, and we didn't create a system on top of this. We created a system that reads and talks to your existing system. So when you're asked for a password and a username, it's your password and username to the same one you would use to get to your VPN or to get to your network drive, if that's what you're trying to do. Yeah, no problem. No, there is no revision control system. And I think you mean if you work on it, it will say this is version 1, and then I work on it as version 2, and you have multiple copies of everything, and you can roll back. This is not there at the moment. So right now, once you're working, it's your responsibility. If you save something, it's your responsibility to save it, what you need to save. Of course, you could do simple things like getting the database to your local machine or just the data sets that you need, work on those and keep them saved temporarily on your local machine until you're happy that this is okay, and then you send them back and merge them, let's say, with whatever is there. But it's not going to check which one is best. It will, if you send something over, it will just copy on top of whatever is there. So it assumes that whatever you're sending over is the latest. You can, of course, just change the name and say version 2, and then you keep both, obviously. Yeah, finally. And again, the theme here is that we want to provide you more freedom to work, in this case, to keep your data with you, or work remotely, or collaborate with somebody somewhere else. And the final thing I want to show, and I'll also demonstrate this in a brief demo before the Lisa's workshop in a moment, is the 1D vantage plot. So the 1D vantage plot is now the default location. When you go into Vantage, the first thing you'll see is a 1D vantage plot, and it has very straightforward controls. It will show you this, shows 1D view. You still have the previous view, which is the object view. It's a 3D or even, 3D or 4D plot, scatter plot. But now you will always land in the 1D view. You have 3 draw styles: the color print, which I'll show you in a moment, the black and white print, and the full color. And obviously, the print ones are easier for editors to accept because they're with less colors, so it's cheaper. But maybe some already like it like this. And then you have some options to show the object, show the box plots, and show the frame. It's very simple controls. And the type of plot you can get is like this. That's the one I showed you. And this is the color print. So it's with a white background and a little bit of color on the dots, which represent individual cells in this case. What's really special about this type of plot versus the other vantage plots is the performance. These plots were tested. Have you ever tried Vantage, by the way? Just curious. You've tried Vantage? So I see quite a lot of nodding. Vantage is, I love it because of the options that it has and how cool it looks. It's impressive, but it has a problem or a limitation, is that it requires the same amount of memory as Surpass requires. So if in Surpass you have problems loading and visualizing complex data sets, you will have the same problems or even worse in Vantage, because Vantage will actually allow you to look at many images, not just one image. And if you have all the data loaded there, all the surfaces, all the filaments, and all of this, it will require quite a hefty computer to plot all of these 3D rendered objects. Welcome. All of these 3D rendered objects. So we've done something different, and here, this Vantage plot type, we specifically engineered it to be high performance. So it can work with hundreds of experimental groups. Here we have just 3, but earlier today I was looking at one from our quality assurance expert, and he had 115 groups. It's obviously just a test, but this was extremely long, and you could not really see the whole plot there. But it can hold many groups, as many as you like, basically. It's rare. I don't know if I know any experiment that has 115 experimental groups, but it's probably possible. And more important for the Imaris user community is that it can interactively plot, so you can still get all the interactivity with millions of objects. And the test we were doing this morning, we had 6.6 million cells plotted on one graph. That's 6.6 million cells. And it still worked just fine. And that's what we were looking for, high performance. What we had to give up is the very beautiful 3D rendering of each cell. So we don't have the actual shape of the cell, we have just a dot, a point. And that's our you have to choose one or the other at this moment in time. And it's publication ready. We've taken a couple of extra steps to create these visualizations or renderings of the plots that are ready for you to send to the printers. And again, we're trying to provide you with more freedom. Previously, you would be kind of stuck with this complex 3D Vantage plot, which was amazing, but it was restrictive because you couldn't, in some cases, actually use it for publication. And now you can use it. You have the freedom to use Vantage also for publication. Okay, so we're getting to the very end of what I wanted to mention before I show a couple of moments in Imaris 8.1, actually. And right now we already have this workflow that I was talking about at the beginning. We start with the resource management part, which is Arena. We then guide you through the visualization part in Surpass and the analysis of a single image, also in Surpass. While you're there and you analyze one image, you can save this protocol, which can then be used to batch process multiple images. And in the end, you get a lot of results which you need to plot somewhere. And we offer Vantage for you to, for now, visually test your hypothesis. So you can look at these box plots and make up your mind. Are they different enough or they're not different enough? But the way we are progressing is to include some statistical tests directly in Imaris so that you have also quantitative measure of how different they are, not just visually. So to recap, we have the Imaris admin, Arena data storage, and 1D plots. These are the key advantages or sub-features, and that's Imaris 8.1. In addition to this, we have a bunch of other things that I didn't show today, but I'll just mention them briefly. We fixed 83 bugs. Almost a third of those were related to Arena performance. And then maybe 20%, so 20% were to do with file handling. And the rest was mixed bag from Imaris XT all the way to Vantage mixed. But the main ones was to do with Arena performance. We introduced also a nice feature to zoom, make the thumbnails bigger and smaller in Arena. That's good for bigger and smaller screens. And one thing I really like, and it's a very simple thing, but very nice, is the import of a full experiment with all the folder structure that you have already created. So with 8.0, you would have to recreate the folder structure by hand. So if you had an experiment with 100 folders, multiple days, multiple groups, multiple regions of interest, all of these things in multiple subfolders, you would need to recreate that. We created now a little tool that will just import the whole structure with the files inside. So it gives you, should make your life a little bit easier. For those of you using Zeiss microscopes that create CZI files, we have, in collaboration with Zeiss, of course, they gave us the needed information, created a reader for CZI time series. This means we don't need to convert it to an IMS file to get very fast visualization. Actually, the CZI file format is very similar to the IMS file format. It is also based on the HDF5 structure, which means it has multiple levels of resolution, and you can access each level depending on, or each of the levels, depending on what zoom you are in. So if you're very high zoom into the image, you get this small area at high definition. If you're zoomed out, you get the whole thing at low resolution. And the Zeiss file format does the same, has the same behavior. So we've introduced a reader that can read just the same as Zen would read it. Imaris will be reading it at the same speed. This is a big advantage for people that were using or that are using light sheet system. Previously in Imaris, you'd have a couple of steps to convert them to an IMS time series. Now it's a direct read, and you can get immediately the CZI series into Imaris. The Imaris file converter is faster by a factor of 2. And also, and you're the first ones to know, we're going to make the Imaris file converter a free tool. It's going to become available on our website. Within 1 month, it will be there to download. What this tool does is convert any file format that we can read currently to an IMS file very, very quickly. And the IMS file has quite a lot of benefits in terms of size and performance. So this will become available for anyone that is interested. If you haven't seen Imaris, that's what it looks like. So we have Surpass, Vantage, and Arena. And I think I will go into Arena now and show you how Imaris 8.1 looks like. Still with me? Good. All right. So visualization is where we started. We have been adding analysis tools for quite a bit of time. In 2011, we added Vantage, which was meant for interpreting results. Now, well, November last year, we added Arena, which helps us with managing the whole experiment. And now we're going into data discovery. That's where we want to go to, and specifically testing hypotheses in a quantitative manner. And ultimately, we would like to minimize the number of experiments that you actually need to do. If that means minimizing the amount of cells you use or animals that you have to cull, I mean, it's basically trying to reduce the actual number of experiments to the bare minimum. And we think we can do this by providing some in silico experimentation functionality in Imaris. And with the database and with the pool of data that we have globally, if you think about it, all of these people doing pretty similar things, a lot of people doing cell tracking. Out of those 15 or 10,000 people, probably 30% do cell tracking. There are probably trends in there that don't require additional experiments, just require tools, good software tools to try and take out some interesting trends and maybe then focus the experiments on those trends rather than do full-size experiments. Anyway, that's what we have been doing. This is where we are going. And I would like to, first of all, thank you all for attending this session. After this, I will do a very brief demo of Imaris 8.1 if you want to hang around. So thank you very much for attending. I also want to thank the development team in Zurich and in Belfast who have been working on Imaris 8 and 8.1 and all the other versions. They've done a great job. The BISC team in Santa Barbara, if you get a chance to go to Santa Barbara, it's a beautiful place. It's in California. Just about an hour and a half south of north of Los Angeles. And they do a great job for us, providing us the backend to Arena. The beta testers, some of you here, that help us iron out those last wrinkles before we make Imaris available to everybody. The team in Belfast that does all our marketing and some support and a lot of paperwork for us, which is great. And you know, we start and we finish with the same. So I have to thank you for continuing to use Imaris. It's more than 100 publications. As a group, the user community, the Imaris user community publishes more than 100, it's 120 or so publications per month. Most of them with image analysis and many of them in high level, high impact journals. So thank you. And yeah, I take questions also. I can't take questions, seriously. Or if you want, I can show you a couple of things in Imaris itself. Yeah? Just pull the chair around.
How you import experiments into existing experiments, you know, like
yeah.
You do batch surfaces and join with another batch spots, something like that.
Yeah. All right, so this is Imaris 8.1, I think. Let me check that. Here. Yeah, Imaris 8.1, May 18th. That's the correct one. And if you have already used it, this will be familiar. So this is the Arena view. You can choose any image, click on it, and it will open in Surpass, normally instantaneously. And once you're in Surpass, you can create a protocol for analyzing this image, which you can save and reapply on many other images that look similar or that are from the same batch, the same experiment. So some of the things that are new, one thing as well I didn't mention, you might have not noticed, but the menu bar is back at the very top. Did any of you request that? One? Okay. So we have changed that. We had removed it from the top and put it all under this kind of multi-tab thing on the right-hand side. But it turns out this is not so popular or usable. So we reintroduced the menu bar on the top. So I'll show you briefly this. So the license management, it always requires the password, of course. The Imaris admin, it's over here. That's the new window. And you can see here the license management part is the same as before, has no new functionality, nothing changed. We have the data management part. This is now over here and you can change it. So as a manager, you can change this to something that you consider is a safe starting place, but still encourage your users to then have their own arena saved somewhere else. So either on a network drive or on a disk or on some other disk that is not the one that you define. Then the system preferences, you can see you can edit this and change it here. So if you change and you say that they cannot edit, they will still see the option, but it will be red and cannot be clicked on. So they can still query and still ask you, why can't I change this? And they'll still see it, but they can't interact with it. And then the advanced preferences, which is everything. Basically, every single thing that you can think about, it's possible to control it over here. And you have a tick mark on every single one of them. So if you want to play around with this, you can really optimize it for your systems. So that's the system administrator. Then the import-export has a few things I did not mention yet. I'll mention them briefly now. So an arena view like the one I have right now, these images, these folders, these images that you see in this particular folder, I've already labeled them local IMS files. So these are my local IMS files that are saved on this disk over here. I can have, in addition, and I have a USB file, so they are over here. So these are kind of local, but remote already, kind of separate. And in addition to that, I can have remote, really. And in here, I can add an image from a network drive. So I can go into, oh, this is dropped out. So I had a network drive here earlier, but you can go into basically a network drive, go to the folder of interest, click on that, and it will show you a thumbnail of that image. It's not copying your image to your disk at this point, not yet. It's just creating a link and showing you a thumbnail. So what you have here, and this is it's important to understand, is these images, the ones that says local IMS, are links to data you have on the disk, and they will react very quickly because they are here. The USB files are also links to something on this disk, so they will react very quickly because they are also here. But the ones you have remote will look just the same as these, but when you click on them, Imaris is going to be downloading that file. So don't expect instant behavior from it. Okay, or if you run a batch, then it will at that point draw the files that it needs to run the batch. This is important to understand because when you export, I don't know, I don't have. Sorry, but interesting. It's always like that, isn't it? Very curious. Let me see if I change something. So those two options should be available. And they are not. Okay. Okay. That's unfortunate. I'll show you what I wanted to show you here because I have prepared a slide that shows this. It's here. So what I was trying to show you is this. So in that situation, like I have in Arena, you will have these two options. And if you hit store, what will happen is all of that data will be saved with a few caveats. If you choose the first option, Arena View only, it will save a file that will have all the links. So it will tell you exactly where all the files are. Some are remote, some are local on a USB, and it will have a file that have information about all the links. And it will save the thumbnail, exactly. If you do save Arena View plus local file, it will store everything that I said, plus all the files that were on the USB, it will transfer them here. It will copy them into your storage path on your local machine. And predictably, if you do the last option, local files plus remote files, it will fetch all the files that you have pointed to on the network drive, plus all the ones on the USB disk to your local machine. And you will have now a database with everything on your local machine. And that's your Arena View. That's in the case of the Arena View being located on your local machine. You can, of course, say that the database should be living somewhere else, completely different. And then everything will be there instead. Thank you. Okay.